Secretary did write, along with Secretary of Defense Austin, to the Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, and the Minister for Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, on Sunday to make clear our concerns about the levels of humanitarian assistance that have been making it into Gaza. This was a letter we consider to be a private diplomatic communication that we did not intend to make public from our side, but now that it is public, I am happy to confirm it and speak to it to some extent. I think you have to put this letter in the context of our ongoing and long-lasting communications and concerns about the levels of humanitarian assistance that have made it to Palestinian civilians. If you go back to April, the Secretary wrote at the time to Minister Gallant to make clear that we had seen the levels of humanitarian assistance plateau, and then after they plateaued, start to decline, and made clear that at the time that the levels were unacceptable and that we needed to see Israel implement changes. But the thing that the Secretary also made clear at the time is that the increase couldn't be a one-off, that it needed to be sustained. And what we have seen over the past few months is that the level of humanitarian assistance has not been sustained. In fact, it has fallen by over 50% from where it was at its peak. So the Secretary, along with Secretary Austin, thought it was appropriate to make clear to the government of Israel that there are changes that they need to make again to see that the level of assistance making it into Gaza comes back up from the very, very low levels that it is at today. We know that it's possible to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. We know it can be done. We know that the various logistical and bureaucratic obstacles can be surmounted. And so it is incumbent upon the government of Israel to surmount those challenges and get assistance in.
Why are you waiting for another 30 days to implement the law?
Because we believe it's appropriate to give them a chance to cure the problem. We didn't think it was appropriate to send a letter and just say this has to happen overnight. We give them make clear there's a short window in which we want to see changes because the humanitarian situation is so dire on the ground, but it is appropriate to give them some time to work through the different issues and find ways to get the level of trucks, get the level of food, water, medicine back up to acceptable levels. We continue to see Israel not taking sufficient steps to address civilian harm, and you have to look no further to understand that than the really horrific results over the weekend. We understand the very difficult environment in which Israel operates, but the results of that strike were deeply disturbing. Mm-hmm. We all saw that video and all know that it's horrifying to see people burned to death. We have made clear our serious concerns about the matter directly to the government of Israel. I can make clear that the policy of the United States is that there should be no forced relocation of people from Gaza, from northern Gaza, and that there should be no permanent occupation of territory in Gaza. And when it comes to the situation in North Gaza, the effect of not just the military operations of the past few weeks, but the closing of the gates in the north and the restriction on movement of aid from the south to the north, the effect has been extremely, extremely dire for people who live in northern Gaza.
Why wasn't it a phone call? Why was it a letter?
Okay. Well, appreciate the question, but we didn't know it was going to get out. We didn't know that someone was going to. All I can tell you is that the Secretary and Secretary Blinken sent a letter. Not going to go into those details. I've seen the social media reports out there, but I'm just not going to go into more details of a letter. Why do you make a phone call versus sending an email versus sending a text? Look, I'm not going to go into the decision making of why a letter versus a phone call, but it was meant to be a private correspondence between two senior administration officials, from the Department of Defense and Department of State to their counterparts. Again, I understand it is an official letter on official letterhead, but those correspondence are still, meant to be private, and so I'm just not going to go into more details on the letter.